Donald Trump is making headlines this hour for what he said about abortions. Trump was talking to MSNBC when he was asked if he believes there should be punishment for abortion if it were illegal. Trump responded, quote, "There has to be some form of punishment. But for now, he has not determined what that punishment would be." His comment comes as a new Marquette University poll shows him trailing Ted Cruz by 10 points in Wisconsin ahead of next Tuesday's primary. Daily Beast political reporter Betsy Woodruff joins us now from Washington. And Betsy, let's just start off with those comments from Trump. What do you make of it?
I think it helps show why he has such a large problem with female voters. Nationwide, we see that women dislike Trump even more than men dislike Hillary. He just has a major woman problem. And we also see this in Wisconsin. In the Marquette poll you just referred to, Ted Cruz beats him by about 10 points among all Republican primary voters they polled, but he beats him by an even larger margin among Republican women. Because even though Trump, of course, is sort of positioning himself as a pro-life candidate, this particular argument that women who get abortions should be punished is even outside the mainstream in the pro-life movement. Pro-life advocates don't make that case. Trump's just kind of shooting from the hip here, and it's not surprising that it shows up in his poll numbers.
So what does that say about, as he has criticized women time and time again? He has attacked everybody from Rosie O'Donnell to Megyn Kelly. What does this do for him as he's trailing in the polls in Wisconsin?
I don't think it helps him at all. It's interesting that his campaign can almost be explained in terms of major female figures that he's denigrated, insulted, demeaned. It's something that he obviously is quite comfortable doing. Of course, remember when he said Carly Fiorina shouldn't be running for president because of her face. She produced one of the most celebrated, praised ads of this entire election cycle, hitting back over that. She's become a valuable Cruz surrogate. None of this helps him out. It's obviously an issue. I mean, nationwide, slightly more women vote than men. Women are a majority of the American electorate. To regularly treat women like they're valuable only as sex objects is something that can be a bit of an electoral liability.
Betsy, Hillary Clinton was quick to jump on this, and she tweeted out, "Just when you thought it couldn't get worse, horrific and telling." Does this help her?
I think it certainly might. Of course, Hillary has a lot of other problems she needs to deal with before she can kind of hopscotch to the general election. In this Marquette poll, we saw Bernie Sanders leading her by about 4 points, which is outside that poll's margin of error. So for her to kind of move ahead and immediately start casting this race like it's her versus Donald Trump, and that's sort of the dominant narrative, she might be being prematurely confident in that. On the other hand, of course, if Clinton can position herself as moderate, as an advocate for women, as the candidate who best understands women, who relates to them most, obviously that will help her. Now, she has a major problem with young women. We see young women supporting Bernie Sanders in droves, but it's certainly plausible that she can capitalize on this issue in a way that would significantly damage Trump.
Let's talk about Wisconsin, the big primary next Tuesday. Is Wisconsin the last stand for the Republican establishment against Trump?
It's interesting that we sort of use the word establishment to criticize or to talk about the opposition to Trump in Wisconsin, because the folks who are going after Trump the hardest in that state aren't even the party leaders or the donors, but rather it's the conservative talk radio hosts. Wisconsin has a really interesting, influential group of conservative talk radio hosts who know the state very well, who have devoted listeners, who focus on local and state issues, and every single one of them, to my knowledge, is an opponent of Trump or is neutral. Trump does not have supporters among talk radio in Wisconsin. In fact, earlier this week, he had 3 disaster radio interviews in one day. Of course, Charlie Sykes lambasted him, and then Vicki McKenna, another radio host, said that Trump hung up on her after she pressed him on manufacturing questions, and a third radio host, Jerry Bader, said to Trump's face, or to his ear, because it's radio, that he wasn't supporting him and that he liked Cruz better. So Trump certainly has a major local media problem, and that might explain why he's seriously lagging behind Cruz in these polls.
Betsy, you're probably not surprised, but more candidates are responding to Trump's controversial comments about abortion and that there should be some sort of punishment. We just heard John Kasich responded on MSNBC. He's pro-life, but he said he's against a ban and he does not advocate punishment. Talk about a little bit, how could he benefit from this? I mean, he's trailing in the polls. A lot of people have written him off, but could something like this derail Trump and give him a boost?
I think it's unlikely that this comment will actually derail Trump, mostly because it's kind of in the same universe of other comments that he's been making for this entire election cycle. That said, anytime it gives Kasich a chance to sort of cast himself as a moderate on this issue, that benefits Kasich. Now, remember, Kasich's record on the abortion issue is certainly not something that pro-choice advocates will celebrate. He supported regulations in Ohio that resulted in the closure of a number of abortion clinics, making it very difficult for women in Ohio to get abortions. Pro-life activists love that. Pro-choice activists, of course, don't. Interestingly, it's something that Kasich hardly ever brings up on the stump. It's not a central part of his pitch. But that said, of course, if he can cast himself as moderate, that helps. Another interesting response I saw was Brian Phillips, who's Ted Cruz's rapid response director. He tweeted, "Don't overthink this. The reason that Donald Trump is saying things like this is because he's not pro-life. He doesn't understand the pro-life movement, so he says things that don't make sense because he doesn't speak that language." I think that's something we'll hear more from Cruz's folks, that Trump is saying stuff that sounds totally tone deaf because he hasn't been part of the pro-life movement, because he doesn't understand the rhetoric, and he hasn't really thought it through.
How do you think this would play out in a general election? This is a topic that we haven't heard a lot about. We've heard a lot about national security and the economy, more international concerns, but this is a hot-button topic. How would this play out in the general?
Certainly. I think you have to sort of look state by state. Of course, some of the most significant swing states in the general are Florida and Ohio. And to the extent that Hillary Clinton can galvanize female voters, especially young female voters, with this issue, I think that could help her. You know, if Trump is the nominee, one of the challenges he'll face is the same challenge Mitt Romney faced, which is sort of trying to present himself as someone who isn't going to be antagonistic towards women, who isn't going to necessarily dramatically curtail the rights that women have, not just in terms of healthcare, but also in terms of the workplace, in terms of protecting themselves in criminal justice situations. So I think it's definitely a liability. Another interesting thing about that Marquette poll, as long as we're talking about the electoral issue, is that it shows that 70% of Wisconsinites have a negative view of Trump. Now, one of the big arguments that you hear Trump supporters making when they talk about the general is they say, okay, Trump might lose Florida, Virginia, and other states with sizable Hispanic populations, but he'll be competitive in Rust Belt, manufacturing, industry-heavy states like Ohio, Pennsylvania, and Wisconsin. But this poll really casts that theory into doubt, because if 70% of Wisconsinites don't want Trump, and if he's already in deep trouble in Florida and Virginia, then it's going to be really tough for him to make an argument going into the convention that he actually could be competitive nationally.
Betsy, we have that sound from Donald Trump on his controversial comments about abortion. Let's listen to that for a second.
Should abortion be punished?
Well, people in certain parts of the Republican Party and conservative Republicans would say yes, they should be punished.
How about you?
I would say that it's a very serious problem, and it's a problem that we have to decide on. It's very hard.
But you're for banning it.
Are you going to say, well, wait, are you going to say put them in jail? Is that
well,
the
no, what I'm
punishment that
asking
you're talking
you,
about?
because you say you want to ban it. What's that mean?
I am pro-life, yes.
What is ban? How do you ban abortion? How do you actually do it? Do you believe believe in punishment for abortion? Yes or no, as a principle?
The answer is that there has to be some form of punishment.
For the woman?
Yeah, there has to be some form.
10 cents, 10 years,
I don't
what?
know. That I don't know. That
Why
I don't
not?
know. I don't know.
You take positions on everything else.
Frankly, I do take positions on everything else. It's a very complicated position.
Betsy, how do you think this is going to play out leading up to the Wisconsin primary and more primaries that are going to follow?
I mean, that's an attack ad waiting to happen. It's such a awkward, vague, clearly unthought out statement. And remember, several months ago, a reporter asked Trump if he thought Plan B, emergency contraception, counted as an abortion, and Trump said he didn't know. The reality is these are really complicated issues. They're incredibly important to conservatives. They're also incredibly important to progressives. Everybody cares about this stuff. And now we have Trump not able to answer very simple questions on these issues. It's going to be easy for Hillary and potentially Bernie Sanders to hit him from the left. Also easy for Cruz to hit him from the right. It's not pretty for him.
Betsy, thank you so much. Appreciate it. Betsy Woodruff.